Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission, as always, is to take your source material, your readings, your notes, and just deliver the most critical knowledge you need without any of the fluff.
Right. You've come to us for a shortcut to getting well-informed and fast.
And today we're tackling a genuinely surprising intellectual thread. We've been tasked with a deep dive into material where the whole central idea is right there in the title.
It is. The title is How Ancient Civilizations Inspired Modern Psychology and Fascinated Scholars.
That's our focus. And just for context, the source itself comes from something called excerpts from Van Dukdan. Since that's an untranslated phrase, we're really focusing on the specific claim in that English title.
Exactly. We're looking at this claim that there's a lasting traceable line, an intellectual inheritance, you could say.
From where to where?
From the very earliest forms of human inquiry about the mind all the way to the rigorous scientific discipline we call psychology today. We need to understand not just that the link exists, but how it works.
Okay, let's unpack this. What stands out to me immediately is just the sheer scope, linking antiquity directly to our 21st century understanding of the mind.
That's a huge span of time.
It is. I mean, think about it. In that time, virtually every other scientific discipline has been completely turned on its head. So why are these ancient thinkers still relevant to a field as cutting edge as, say, neuroscience?
That's the core question for you, the listener. That's our objective today. We're going to trace that lineage, and we'll focus on two central elements.
Okay.
First, the profound contributions from those ancient thinkers, and then why today's scholars are still so motivated to, mine those old texts for answers.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The title says inspiration. That suggests the ancient world wasn't just like a historical footnote.
Yeah, not at all.
It actively established the very terrain that psychology now explores. When we talk about ancient civilizations, we're mostly thinking of the Greeks, the Romans, early Asian traditions.
And they were the first ones to really try to systematically explain the universal human experience.
Right.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the reason ancient thought has lasted is that it laid down the foundational problem set. I mean, before we had the tools to measure brain chemistry or anything like that, these cultures were already developing these really comprehensive frameworks for
what? Like suffering? Motivation?
suffering, motivation, ethical self-regulation. The big question.
Okay, but let's get specific. Can you give me an example of an ancient idea that directly informs a major modern therapeutic model?
Oh, absolutely. The clearest one is the link between Stoic philosophy and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT.
Right, CBT, everyone's heard of that.
Well, Stoicism, which was formalized by people like Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, it's fundamentally an instruction manual
An instruction manual for what?
on how to manage your emotional life by controlling your perceptions.
So that famous Stoic idea that we aren't disturbed by things, but by the views we take of them.
That is almost a verbatim summary of a core principle of CBT. It's incredible.
Wow.
Modern psychology, through rigorous scientific research, basically validated this ancient intuition. CBT is all about identifying and restructuring those irrational or unhelpful thoughts to change your emotional and behavioral outcomes.
So the philosophical principle became a scientific method.
Precisely. The ancient goal of apathy, which isn't apathy, it's a state of undisturbed mental clarity, is strikingly similar to the modern therapeutic goal of emotional resilience.
That is a phenomenal connection. It shows the translation from philosophy into actual practice. The ancients gave us the wisdom, and modern science gave us the mechanism and, I guess, the terminology.
And another crucial link is in early medical texts. Think about the Hippocratic and Galenic traditions. They developed the theory of the four humors.
Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. I remember that from school.
Right. And while it was, of course, medically flawed, it was the first comprehensive, systematic attempt to link what's happening inside you, your biology, to your external behavior and personality.
So that's the precursor to our modern models of temperament, isn't it?
Absolutely. The idea that your personality comes from a balance of these core physical elements that shaped how we understood melancholy or sanguine personalities for centuries.
And today?
Well, modern personality models, like the Big Five, are now rooted in genetics and neurological factors, but they're essentially asking the same question. What mix of innate internal traits determines how we typically respond to the world? The conceptual leap from ancient humors to modern temperament theories? It's shorter than you'd think.
So, okay. The ancient world gives us the framework for managing emotional distress through philosophy. and the first attempt to categorize personality through early medicine. So where does modern psychology pick up the baton? I mean, why weren't those ideas enough?
That's a key question. The ancients provided this profound intuition and ethical guidance, but what they lacked were the tools for empirical testing.
They couldn't run a controlled experiment.
Exactly. So modern psychology really emerged in the 19th and 20th centuries because thinkers wanted to apply the scientific method, measurement, observation, replication to these timeless questions.
It's the moment intuition meets the lab coat. You shift from a philosophical debate to the systematic study of the mind.
And many of the core scientific movements in modern psychology are direct scientific responses to these ancient concerns. Take the concept of the soul, or the psyche, which the ancients were constantly grappling with.
Right.
When early psychodynamic theory came along, especially from Freud, it formalized this idea of the unconscious mind.
Ah, that's a brilliant reframing. The ancient question about the soul, this hidden driving force behind our actions, is modernized and kind of materialized as the unconscious.
Precisely. And look at Freud's exploration of dreams. He called it the royal road to the unconscious. Well, that's just a highly formalized, modern version of a concept that virtually every ancient civilization from Egypt to Greece believed in.
That dreams were a source of wisdom.
A primary source of profound, hidden wisdom or even divine guidance. Today, therapy looks at dreams as a source of information about our internal conflicts. The ancients saw them as warnings or prophecies. The subject matter is exactly the same.
So what does this all mean for someone, engaging with psychology today? It means the questions we ask about things like consciousness, mental health, social structures, they aren't new discoveries.
Not at all.
They're continuous, unbroken conversations. We just frame them now with scientific rigor, with statistics, with updated terms like cognitive dissonance or attachment theory.
We're basically testing the hypotheses of the past. And the ability of modern science to validate that ancient wisdom, like the Stoic principle in CBT, it doesn't diminish the ancient contribution at all.
It elevates it.
It elevates it. It proves that despite millennia of cultural and technological change, there are fundamental truths about human cognition that just remain constant.
It gives psychology this immense sense of historical grounding. It's like realizing that the structure of the most advanced skyscraper follows load-bearing principles figured out by architects millennia ago. The materials are new steel and glass, but the basic human construction remains the same.
And that continuity is the source of the third and crucial element in our source title: why this history fascinated scholars.
Right.
It's not just an academic footnote for historians, it's an active area of research for psychologists, philosophers, cognitive scientists today.
So why are they still digging? Is it just historical curiosity, or is there a real utility in tracing these old lines of thought?
What's so fascinating here is that the scholarly effort is about synthesis and getting critical distance. Modern researchers are mining these ancient texts for, I'd say, three main reasons: validation, analogy, and challenge.
Okay, let's start with validation. What do you mean by that?
Validation is the most straightforward. Imagine a modern theory is developed through a complex series of clinical trials, and then a scholar finds a parallel, fully articulated concept in a 2,000-year-old text.
Wow. It provides instant, powerful validation. It confirms that the insight taps into some kind of essential, unchanging human truth that just transcends its historical context.
That must be incredibly humbling for a researcher. You spend 10 years on a study, and you realize a Roman orator basically said the same thing.
It forces humility, but also intellectual expansion. And that brings up the second use, analogy. Sometimes ancient thinkers offer analogies or frameworks for understanding complex mental states that are, frankly, more intuitive or culturally complete than our current scientific models. For example, some ancient societies had these highly sophisticated, community-focused models for dealing with trauma that really challenge modern Western psychology's intense focus on the individual.
So the ancients offer alternative lenses. It prevents the modern field from getting stuck in a kind of temporal isolation, the belief that only the latest research matters.
Exactly. And that leads directly to the third use, challenge. Scholars look to antiquity to challenge the cultural biases and limitations that are embedded in our contemporary theories.
How so? Well, if a concept about human nature has survived vast cultural shifts, wars, revolutions, scholars recognize its power. But on the other hand, if a concept is totally absent from widespread ancient thought, it might suggest that concept is more a product of our modern Western culture than some universal human truth.
So it gives the contemporary field an essential intellectual. a critical mass.
Hmm.
The source material isn't just an artifact.
It's an active contributor.
It's an active contributor to the current discussion, offering these profound counterpoints to modern ways of thinking.
And this scholarly fascination is what ensures these early insights stay relevant. They aren't dismissed as just historical footnotes because they are still profoundly useful for either confirming or complicating our scientific models of human behavior. The deeper the roots, the stronger the tree.
So this deep dive has really explored the essential central claim from your source material, how ancient civilizations inspired modern psychology and fascinated scholars.
And I think the core insight is that this inspiration is acknowledged, it's traceable, and it's absolutely vital. The ancient world gave us the foundational problem set, the nature of consciousness, emotion, ethical living.
And modern psychology provides the methodological rigor, the science, the empirical data to test and operationalize those ancient intuitions.
Exactly. The two fields, though they're separated by centuries, are locked in this continuous productive dialogue about what it means to be human.
We've seen specific examples from Stoic philosophy inspiring modern CBT all the way to early medical texts laying the groundwork for personality theories. These weren't just lucky guesses.
No, they were rigorous, systematic inquiries into the human condition. They were simply waiting for the tools of modern science to come along for validation.
Which leads us to a final thought for you to consider as we wrap up this deep dive.
Right. It's this. If the ancients understood human nature so fundamentally well so many centuries ago that their ideas still inform our science today, then what modern problems are we currently solving? What major psychological discovery do we celebrate today that future generations will simply see as a scientific reframing of that same timeless, primal human wisdom?
What essential truth about the mind truly transcends time?
And what are we still missing? That's the question that will continue to drive scholarly fascination for the next 1,000 years.